Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rule the Roost podcast. Microphone is back. Spurs' poor performances are back. Please excuse the mess in the background. If you're watching this, yeah, Spurs 2, Bournemouth 2. Some calling this a spirited comeback. Some calling this a turnaround. All that type of stuff. Was it? Was it really? Really, it was just a poor performance from Tottenham. Bournemouth didn't punish us. They probably should have done, but they didn't. And we got kind of lucky. Kepa just, has that in him, doesn't he? Has that in him to be that ridiculous. And it was ridiculous. This is not good. I'm sorry, it's not good. It's not good. The thing is, I can't continue to caveat this. I can't continue to kind of sit on the fence. He's got to go. The man, it's not a thing anymore. I'm sorry. It's how I feel about it. I know there are reasons. I know Daniel Levy, all this type of stuff, but Spurs look bad. We look terrible. I've seen some people say, "What's the manager to do if individual players have forgotten how to pass the ball properly?" That's on him. That's on the coaching staff that he's employed, that he has around him. I honestly believe that our players are starting to degrade. I think they are. I think they just look supremely poorly coached. I got so rattled yesterday watching Man City against Nottingham Forest. Not because I'm sat there fawning after Nuno Espirito Santo or anything like that. I know how terrible that one turned out for us when he was in charge of us. Wrong manager, wrong place, all that type of stuff, right? But he's clearly a competent guy. The main thing I would say is, I think number one, I think people overstate quite how badly Nottingham Forest play football. I don't think it's as bad as some, basically some peak murder ball. It's all right. It's not great, but it's all right. But their players look extremely well drilled. Their players look like they know what they're doing. Their players look like they know how to execute the plan that they've been training all week. They've been training for. Ours don't. Our players consistently look clueless. They consistently look frustrated. They look like they're not all on the same page. It's just it's just a mess. It's a mess. Um, we honestly, whereas I've just turned 40 years old, and I will honestly say that we are now as bad as I ever remember as being in the Premier League. As bad as I ever remember. Um, and I've said on here before that I don't think it's all Ange Postecoglou's fault, if you like, but it's his job to make this better. And he's just not doing it anymore. We've run out of excuses. We were told when Solanke's back, when Romero's back, when the players have played less games, and now it's because we've not played enough games that everybody is. Come on. It's not a thing. We know it's not a thing. This is not, it's just not working anymore. It's not happening. There's still that part of me that, as I was saying after the game the other night against RZ, there's still that part of me that feels like we don't really want a prolonged period again where we don't have a manager. We don't want a public race for managers. We don't want to be turned down by people in public again, like we had with Slot, like we had with Nagelsmann. I don't think the club really needs all that. But at the same time, this is just not this is not good. This is not good. We're not playing good football at all. And I find it quite wild. I find it quite wild the lengths people will go to pretty much blame anybody other than Ange Postecoglou for this. So it's Daniel Levy or it's the players or there's always a reason. There's always a reason. But cycled through so many different players. And really, to me, all that we do is the same thing over and over and over again, which is try to get people down the wings and spam crosses and hope somebody will get onto the end of it. And that's all we do. And you might be watching this and say, "No, that's so simplistic. You're an idiot. You don't see this sophisticated tactical plan that Ange has laid out." No, I don't. Quite simply, I don't. And just it it's just run its course. It's run its course. We can say, "Oh, he's a nice bloke," and all this type of thing. I'm not really bothered about that right now. I'm just tired of Spurs losing games, looking like they're not even competing anymore. It's become so normalised to see Tottenham lose games, to play poorly, to to look, Bournemouth are a good side, right? The thing is, I'm sort of checking myself because Bournemouth are a good side. They are coached well. They've spent money, right? They're not the Bournemouth of old, but at the same time, we're Tottenham Hotspur, man. We're Tottenham Hotspur. We got so much money. We got one of the biggest stadiums in world football, right? One of the most secure financial offerings that you can imagine, right? We should be. It's not. It's not ridiculous or deluded or whatever to say we should be comfortably beating teams like Bournemouth at home. And we can talk about the landscape of the Premier League, the way it's undulating, the way that old powers are whatever falling down. Manchester United, look at them, and all this type of stuff, right? We can talk about that. We can talk about the fluctuations in the force and all that sort of thing. But really, again, if we stop with the gymnastics, mental gymnastics, we can quite clearly see and say that Tottenham Hotspur should be beating Bournemouth at home. We just should be. We certainly shouldn't be scrabbling to claw back a draw and make out like it's something special. Like, and again, if this is an isolated instance, right? If Spurs are doing fine otherwise, and Bournemouth spring a surprise and we draw 2-2 at home, yes, in isolation, if we want to make that disingenuous point, in isolation, that's not the end of the world. However, when this has been the pattern of the entire season, 18, is it 17 or would it be? I think it's 17 losses still because we didn't lose today. Would this have been the 18th or would this have been the 19th loss? Either way, it's appalling. It's appalling, and it's become so normalized, and it's so ridiculous to suggest that this is just what it is, and the manager simply can't do anything about this. It's his job. It's his job, and he may not be getting paid the same amount of money as somebody like Jose or Conte, but he's still getting paid a hell of a lot of money to do this job, and he's just not doing it very well anymore. Whether it's him, whether it's the backroom staff that he's hired, it's just not happening. It's just not happening. We've sat and we've watched this. We've watched this now for 2 years. Well, for at least a year. Let's say at least a year. We've watched a year of Tottenham not being good at all. Not being good at all. And there are always being excuses why we're not good. And there are always being kind of reasons over the hill. Just over the hill, it will get better because this will happen or that will happen. And then it will be good. And then come on. I'm not buying it anymore. I'm not buying it anymore. James Nicholson, I was Ange for the longest time. He has to go. We're getting worse, not better. Yep. Zeros and ones. Ryan Mason is looking like a good shout now. That was one of the most undeserved points I can remember since the 3-3 against West Brom under Sherwood. Yeah, I blocked that one out of my memory, I think. Brian Park says, "We'll look back on this era of Spurs and wonder how on earth we kept this manager for so long." Like, it's kind of how it's starting to look for me. I'll be honest. Bevlar, perfect chance to play Archie Gray in midfield, and he leaves him on the bench. Doesn't make any sense. I guess the only thing I would say, Bevlar, I'm just saying, Archie Gray's played a hell of a lot of football lately. Maybe he just needs the rest. Because I know what you're saying, but maybe he does. You know. Deuces Wild says, "My biggest frustration is that we look outnumbered all over the pitch. Build up, stifled, attacking. Allow them to get bodies behind the ball. Defensively, don't get me started." Lee says, "The whole what can Ange do for players unable to pass argument is on him. He's asking them to execute ludicrous patterns that require unicorn footballers in his system." Yeah. So, and Lee also says we're on 18 losses this season. This would have been the 19th. That's that's appalling. That's appalling. I read just before this game that we are now equaling our worst ever Premier League season for draws. For losses. What am I saying? Draws. Why for draw? Where that come from? For losses. I know people don't like these one. I get it. People don't like these pods when I come on and I just moan. And I totally realise that's what I'm doing today. But in the sort of clickbaity podcaster fashion, I've had enough. I've just had enough of Spurs being this bad and always having to kind of caveat it and make excuses and say, well, it's just not a thing anymore. And I just RZ was close to it for me. And now this today has just pushed me into that place where I'm like, it's just clearly not working. Clearly isn't working. And I still think if I'm honest, like, if I take a bit of time to cool down and think about it and all that type of thing, when it's not the sort of the heat of a match, I do still kind of think, you know what, like we should just wait till we've got somebody else lined up and then say goodbye, Ange. Thank you very much. But there's that growing part of me now that is just like, maybe we should just give it Mason. Maybe we should just give it Mason to the end of the season again because, you know, Thomas Cowie says one home win in the league since the start of November is absolutely diabolical. And it is. Like this is the thing, it's become so normalized. It's become so normalized for us to read these sort of stats out, right? One home win in the league since the start of November. That is genuinely the sort of thing we would look back on an era of a Christian Gross or Juan de Ramos, somebody like that, and say, remember that time when we won one game at home in 4 or 5 months, and for it to be anything other than a total farce, for it to be anything other than a reflection on a totally abject point for the club. And yet we still kind of are being made to caveat this, to say, actually, no, it's okay because maybe it'll get better. It's just not happening, is it? It's not happening. It's not happening. And it's so frustrating. Like even after this, I say the most milk toast thing on Twitter about it, and you get called an idiot. You getting what is it, getting called a child? Like really, really? Like we're gonna sit and watch Spurs just never really contest football matches for what? For what? Because we have these kind of ridiculous notions that, well, we can't just keep sacking managers. Well, maybe we need to. Maybe we need to until it does work. Just because we've done it previously and it's somehow come back to bite us doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it this time just because we've done it loads of times before. I don't know. It's not knee jerk. This is a solid year at least. This is a solid year of Tottenham being abject, and we have been. We've been abject. And I'm poking like I've got that bit in my head now. It's started. I've poked it, and I've got to say that he had the temerity that even throughout in the middle of all this, he had the temerity to go for us, to go for us in that City game last season, to talk about the fans and to talk about the fans' mentality. For him to throw the City game in the way that he did this season, I've never. The thing is, I know myself, and you can say whatever you want, but I know myself well enough to know for that City thing last year. Anyway, I was never going to forgive him for that. I've never really fully submitted to loving him, to being like completely enthralled by him, and really hoping that it works for him. I think he does seem like a good guy. I think he's kind of got decent principles. I like the way he talks about football. I like the approach he wants to implement. But to me, it's becoming ever clearer that he is incapable of doing that. Either he's incapable of doing it, or the backroom staff are incapable of relaying the appropriate messages to the playing staff. And that's all I can say about it. Tom Hayward, or Tom Foynes, as you may know him, says, I recorded a pod with him in the week and he's referencing that. He said, I've changed my opinion since our pod. It doesn't matter what he does this season. He can't be our manager next year. God knows how much damage he'll do. I'm kind of starting to feel away. And you can tell the thing is, Son and Madison in particular were making no secret of their unhappiness being sat on the bench in the first half, especially James Maddison. James Maddison was obviously sat on the bench talking quite openly about it at the end of when he was taken off against RZ Alkmaar. And Ange said he said something in the presser, didn't he? He said something in the presser that was like it was a tacit little blub. And we know Ange pays attention to social media. We know Ange is always trawling the feeds. He reads everything that's written about him. He talks about this quite openly himself, and it it won't have passed him by the furore around James Maddison and the not covering his mouth type thing sat on the bench going on about the plan or the lack of plan or something. And Ange said in his pre-match presser today that it wasn't about the plan; it was about the players' ability to execute the plan. And to me, it just felt barbed. It's using those words in particular. Yes, it is a response to a journalist asking him about players being able to, is his plan working or whatever it was. The question was, but it's just the disconnects there. You can see the players aren't feeling him. I don't know. I think it's done. Ben Austin says he should be sacked for the midfield selection alone. Absolutely horrendous from start to finish. Absolutely nothing positive to take from that. No way we'll get a top half finish this season. I agree. And the thing is, you know what, Ben? Like everybody says, well, it doesn't matter. Just write the league off. Just write the league off and throw all our eggs into the Europa basket. Is that what we should do? Is that what a club, a group of fans, and again, this is being scoffed at now. This is being scoffed at mainly by people that don't actually go to games, and yeah, I seldom go to games anymore. Um, but I still have respect for people that do, and people that do voice their concern through the prism of being charged the highest ticket prices in, one of the highest ticket prices at least in world football to go and watch Tottenham. When people say, "Ah, I just can't be bothered." I just sort of think about this. I just can't be bothered to keep having to go through the caveats, to go through the reasons why this is or isn't. It's just bad. It's just bad. And it's felt like so much of this season has been me sat here, honestly, at times, quite disingenuously trying to clutch at straws and say, this is all right. Partly because I'm trying to be positive, and I have been trying to be positive. I don't just want to come on here. It's not enjoyable to sit here for half an hour, and just moan and complain, and wind myself up, and become one of those people that does podcasts or YouTube or whatever, that's shouting and gets off on being like one of those miserable fans that opposition fans watch and say, "Ha, ha, 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 look at that." Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that, but I can feel myself. And the thing is, there have been times this year when I found it hard to do this because after I've finished it, I've stopped the pod, and like Charlotte will say to me, "How was it? How was the pod? How did you manage to talk about that one or whatever?" I'll just say, "I don't know," and I didn't enjoy it. I don't, because I'm not being authentic. I'm not being my genuine self because I'm sat here saying, "Well, maybe. Well, maybe." Well, when honestly, the truth's been staring us all in the face for months, for a year. It's just not working. It's just not working. It just isn't. We don't want it to be in this place again. And I think that's part of it. I don't want it to be in that place. I don't, I don't, I'm not even buying into the tribalism of it all. Like, well, at least it means that the worst people on the internet, in quotation marks, as in people who are hugely pro Ange. I'm not saying, I'm just saying it as a turn of phrase that people use. At least the people on the other side of the internet will be unhappy about this. I want Tottenham. I want Tottenham to do well at the end of the day. I want Tottenham to do well more than I want any inkling I have about a manager to be validated. That's not important to me. What's important to me is to see Tottenham do well, to see Tottenham finish as high up the table as they possibly can, to win something. It's been such a ridiculously long time since we've won something. It's just not happening. It's just not happening. It's just not working. It's just not working. It's just not. And you know, I- it's done. It's done. We know it's done. Come on. Come on. Be honest. Be honest. Even if you're sat there, even if you're slightly more pro Ange than I am, right? You must know it's done. It's just not happening. Lama All Sports says, honestly, let him see it out to the summer. There's nothing to play for. Um, Having a go about the atmosphere is extremely rich. If the team wasn't flat, the atmosphere wouldn't be flat. When did he say something about that recently? Let me know. I didn't know if he said something about the atmosphere recently or not. Zeros and One says, I think this is all because we went so early on this song. Yeah, it was a good tune, though, wasn't it? Robbie Williams and has anyone seen the Robbie Williams chimpanzee film? It's good. You know what? It made me appreciate actually. As a child of the '90s, Robbie Williams had a lot of bangers as well. He had a lot of bangers. I've got to say, guilty pleasures and what have you. But yeah, it was a good tune that though, wasn't it? The Ange Postecoglou one. Um, Thomas Mullen says these players are not good enough. We bought English first division players instead of Spanish in Europe, and the manager is a bad fan. 60 years, and this is one of the worst Spurs sides I've ever seen. Um, I mean, I like, mate, yeah, you've got a few years on me, Thomas, but I'd still say in my time, this is one of the worst Spurs sides I've ever seen. I don't know if I fully agree with you on the players. I, don't, I still think there's a few talented players in there. I do think there are. I definitely, what I think is, I think they're better than what this manager is getting out of them right now. I do think that. I've got to say, I have drastically revised my position on Brennan Johnson, and I honestly think he's a championship level player. I cannot believe, I cannot believe we've spent as much money on Brennan Johnson as we did. I think he is truly average. Truly average. I think if you slapped him like we've had with Manos Solomon, you see him, he's tearing up the championship now. You would have similar with Brennan Johnson. I think if you biffed him off to Leeds or wherever next year, he'd kill it. He'd absolutely kill it in the championship. He's got that about him. But there was that one moment when he was running at Housen, In the first half, I think it was Hosian. He's like a Dutch Spanish player. Hosian was just backing off, backing off. He's like, "Yep, yep, let him keep coming, let him keep coming, let him keep coming," and then just nick the ball off him quite easily. And that's just, I just feel like any half decent. I know that Hostin's a really good player, really good young player, looks very, very talented. But I think any half decent player is looking at somebody like Brennan Johnson. Any half decent defender is looking at someone like Brennan Johnson and thinking, you know, I'll have bang average wingers like this for breakfast. Apparently, Ange Postecoglou has been moaning about the atmosphere in his. I mean, look, this guy, man, this guy. I mean, that might honestly, my I've got to look up this quote now because my head is on Mars. If he's digging out the fans again, honestly, that is wild. That is absolutely wild. I want to see what he says about the atmosphere here. Yeah, look, again, I said before, I can't sort of dictate to people how they interact, but AZ's crowd certainly helped them on Thursday night. And we need our crowd to get behind the boys, make it an atmosphere. We need to lose some of that nervousness and anxiety within our game. Um, but the reality is, we as a team have to respond. If we start the game strong, it will get the place loud, which will help us. Mm, okay. I can't, like, it's veiled. It's not an out. What I would say is it's not an out and out attack on the fans. I don't think it's an out and out attack. Just reading it back, I don't think it's an out and out attack, but it's definitely beg your pardon. It's definitely prickly, isn't it? It's definitely. I get it. It's a tacit criticism of the supporter base, and he's got form for it. He's got form for coming for the fan base of this club before, and I just don't think he's got any place to. I really don't think he has any place to, because that culture is seeping out into the players. So people say whatever they want about Vicario being a passionate guy. He shouldn't be waving his arms at the away end after a performance like RZ. And he admits that. He knew that. He's put a big lengthy apology basically in on his Instagram page, which I think is good. It's good of him to do that. But how much of that is being emboldened by the manager and the way that he is, his the way he constantly responds to the fan base. Going over that, was it actually Bournemouth? I think it was Bournemouth away, wasn't it? When he went over to the away fans trying to make one with them. Just think, mate, what are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah, I'm not fond of all that. I'm not fond of all that. K9 McGurn says, I like Ange. I don't believe a change would make the end of this season better. We need to plan our change for next year now. Yeah, yeah, I'm sort of on the fence of that. Do you know what I mean? As I've sort of said to this point, I'm kind of on the fence there. And Brian Park says Andrew's been bitter at the fans since having a go at us for wanting to throw the game against City last year. And yeah, he has. It's all come from that. And like I say, I think there is a level of hypocrisy there now with how readily he did throw this City game. And he did throw it. Come on. He threw it. He rested some of our best players against Manchester City. That's just it's just a concession straight away. Um oh, I don't know. I just don't know. I just don't I just don't see it anymore. I just for me it's just done. It's just done. Let's do the players though. I can't really be bothered to do the players today. But I will. Vicario, I thought was quite good actually. He saved that was it Evan Nilsson who broke through the second the whistle blew in the first half. Nearly scored what would have probably been one of the quickest Premier League goals in history. Well, would have been one of the quickest Premier League goals in history. Good save from Fakari. I think he pulled off a couple of really good saves in the game. Jed Spence, bit of a quieter one from him today. You know, who knows? Maybe they're all rubbing off on him, the people he plays with. But still, he's one of our best players. Danso, I thought was good. I thought Danso was good. I'm going to say maybe I am hyping him too much, but I think Danso is a good player. Christian Romero, an absolute horror show today. Stunk the place out. He's not been playing for a while, so that may be part of it, but stunk the gaff out. Despicable performance from him, and yeah, is what it is. Pedro Porro, fine, I think actually, to be honest, okay, but again, it's all that sort of thing, isn't it? Papsar, yeah, sort of a lucky-ish goal, but got the goal, took the opportunity. I thought actually played quite well today. I know he's far from flavour of the month right now, but I quite liked his endeavour at least. Yves Bissouma, pretty pointless, isn't he, at this point? The way Ange kind of jettisons him, drops him in every now and again, jettisons him again. Just, it's not good for him. It's not good for us, is it? Rodrigo Bentancur, for me, an absolute waste of space now. He'd be the first player I'd get out the door in summer. Please don't give him a new contract. Wilson Odobert, he's getting a lot of flack lately, but I think it's unfair. I think he looked lively. I think I just, he's a young player, and I think I'm encouraged by his start. Let me put it that way. Brennan Johnson, yeah, an awful player, I think. Not awful, just very average. Gets in the right place at the right time, which is, I guess, a good skill to have, to give him his dues. Dominic Solanke, yep, it's good to have his sort of toil. He's clearly not fully fit, but glad to have him back. No real big takes or hot opinions on him right now. Son Heung-min obviously got us the penalty, scored the penalty. Well done, Sonny. Didn't look happy not to start, but probably needs resting as he's been quite poor lately. But I think he's playing too much football, and I'm not really having the whole thing of we need to bin Son off, because I think under a manager that probably utilizes him properly, he'll be good again. James Maddison, yeah, I mean, to be fair to him as well, beautiful ball through to Sonny in the lead up to the penalty. Clearly had a point to prove. Fine. Didn't do much else. So Destiny Doggy, yeah, wasn't on for long. Lucas Bergvall did actually start to turn the tide when he came on again. Very dynamic. Really he's got the sort of energy that we need in this team right now. And that for me alone is enough to overlook any kind of concerns I have about him being young or whatever, fine. Mickey van der Ven, yeah, I sort of almost forgot he came on. But it was good to see him come on for a bit, have a bit of time on the pitch. Fine, good. I've got to say that it's awful. But when he burst into like full sprint towards the end of the game, I was just like, come on, man, don't do it, don't do it. I've been told there's another quote from Ange. Let me try and find it. Apparently, there's another quote from Ange Postecoglou today. Ange atmosphere. So maybe the quote I found didn't quite sell it. So he said the players is this the one? The players kept on persevering despite the anxiety in the atmosphere. Yeah, I don't know. There's another one. What's this? Yeah, chaotic game for sure. We added to the chaos, and it was a little bit self-inflicted, especially in the first half. Just with the ball, we were really careless, and our passing allowed us the game to be played on the terms Bournemouth would like with their transition football. So chaotic. 2-0 down, it would have been so yeah, chaotic, but at 2-0 down, it would have been very easy, particularly with the atmosphere as it was, for the boys just to let the game get away from us. But credit to them. They found a way to get back into the game, and we got to get. He's got to stop, man. He's got to stop doing this. It's nonsense, man. It's nonsense. And it's so, do you know what? The thing is, I've got to say, for all the talk about him being this great guy, he's demonstrated these socialist values in the past or whatever. To literally stamp down on the fans, to stamp down on like the ordinary people is such a bad look. It's so ugly, and my head is on Mars again. I'm starting to get wound up again. But I don't like it when this guy does this, man. I don't like it when he does this. Don't like it. It's cheap. It's so cheap of him to do that all the time, and he does it far too often. Does it far too often when the team aren't performing, to just say, "Oh, it's the it's just the atmosphere." Yes, and people say, "Well, we all moan about it." Yeah, but we can. We're fans. We moan about the other fans. Fine, but for the manager, whenever the chips are down, to consistently keep calling the fans out in the way that he does, it's not a good look, man. And I don't like it. I don't like it. Top one Ham says Danso was not good. I think he was, mate, but is what it is. Lama All Sports says it's blaming the fans for his failings. Yeah, and he does. You know, so much was made of the fans in that Manchester City game last year, but it was ridiculous. We're in such a poor run of form at that point. Manchester City were going for the title, and somehow that whole fixture, because he allowed it to, because Postecoglou allowed it to become that, got turned on to the fans. It got turned on to the Tottenham fan base. That's why we had such a poor season. That's why Manchester City won the league and Arsenal lost it. It's not because of Arsenal losing at home to Aston Villa or anything like that, right? It's not because of Manchester City relentlessly winning game after game after game after game. No, it's the Tottenham fans. Beg your pardon. And Postecoglou completely leaned into that, and he loves to do that at any opportunity he gets. It's just nonsense, man. It's nonsense. And I've arrived where I began, which is, I think this is done now. I think it's done. I'm still between whether or not he goes now or he goes at the end of the season. But either way, he goes for me now. It's not working. It's not happening. It's just done. It's done. And I don't have much more to say about it today, to be honest, because I'm just getting caught in this feedback loop now of getting wound up, getting annoyed about it. I don't want to do that. Patreon.com/RTR pod if you want ad-free podcasts. Please leave ratings, please leave reviews. Appreciate all the support that you can give me, emotionally, financially, spiritually, anything, right? Physically if you want to. But yeah, not a good day for Spurs again. Yeah, cool. We claw back. We got a point at home against Bournemouth. How depressing is that? That's supposed to be our silver lining. We're supposed to be happy and grateful about that. Nonsense. It's done. Goodbye.